Hello again. So we're going to talk about how a bill becomes a law. A little bit of schoolhouse rock for you guys today. So a lot of times we'll see in the news, bill in Ohio might take away the right to do something, and everybody freaks out. And typically what's happened is that the State House News Bureau has picked up that a bill is about to be introduced. And then that runs on the wires. And so the wires start in Columbus. And when I say wire, it used to be like an old time, news wire, that it would go out. And now it's the AP News Wire, the State House News Wire. And it takes a little while to get from Columbus out to the rest of the state. So if you see somebody that's in the corners of the state that you're like, well, I knew that 3 days ago, that's why, because it goes out on the wires. So, typically, that's what's happening is that something's been introduced. The State House News Bureau has picked it up, and then they've sent it out on the wire. So a lot of times when you see something, it's only been introduced. So how it goes is there's behind the scenes, there's kind of a call for sponsors, and then the bill's introduced, and then the bill gets its sponsor testimony. So that's the day that the person who is the primary sponsor or the primary co-sponsors of the bill will go into committee, which we talked about before, and they will give their testimony as to why this bill is important and why they are introducing it. And then afterwards, the committee will ask them questions, which they will answer in the way that I spoke about before. So after the bill is introduced, then you have supporting testimony. So you have proponent testimony. Those are people that want the bill. They get first crack at saying why the bill is good. Okay. Then after that, you get opponent testimony, and that's a whole day to tell why you don't think the bill is good. So we have proponent testimony and opponent testimony. So if you look on the agenda and you'll see PROP testimony or you'll see OPP testimony, that's proponent, opponent. So typically a bill will always have 3 readings. There's sponsor, proponent, and opponent, to make it fair that everybody gets their shake in order to say what they think about the bill. Now, they can choose to pass that bill out on the 3rd reading, or they can choose to table it and have 4, 5, 6, 7 readings. We've been involved with a lot of bills that have had lots of readings and then they never got out of committee. But the way that a bill works is so you'll have your readings in your committee. If a bill then passes out of committee, let's say that it's in the House. The bill passes out of committee in the House. The bill then has to go to the floor of whatever House it's in. So if it's in the House of Representatives, it goes there. And if it's in the Senate, it goes there. So whatever House it's in. So if it's on the House side, it will go to the House floor. And typically they don't pass anything on the House floor on the first reading, especially if it's controversial. So when we know that something is going from the House to the floor, we know that if it makes it to the floor, sometimes it gets out of committee and it never actually gets put on the agenda to go on the floor. But if it gets to the floor, then you'll have readings of it on the floor. Then it would pass the House, let's say. After it passes the House, it goes over to the Senate, or vice versa. If it passes the Senate, it goes back to the House. It then gets assigned to another committee. So another committee will then do the same thing that they did in the House. You'll add amendments, you'll change it, or whatever. After it goes through that committee, it then goes to the Senate floor, so the second floor. If it makes it through the first committee, the second committee, or the first committee, the second floor, the second committee, the second floor, then it has to go back to wherever it started if there were amendments added, and then that House gets to decide on concurrence. So we've got first step is committee, second step, the floor. Third step, over to the other side, committee, fourth step, floor. Fifth step is concurrence vote. So they have to reconcile what's happened between these. If they can't get a concurrence vote, then they get together and try to figure it out, or it just dies. So if all of this happens, then the 6th part would be the governor signing the bill. So the governor has 10 days to either sign the bill or veto the bill or do nothing. So if the governor signs the bill, it becomes law. If the governor does nothing in 10 days, it becomes law. And if the governor vetoes it, obviously it either goes back to the House that passed it out, and then they can override the veto, or they can choose not to do anything. So there's your steps on how a bill becomes a law in Ohio. And if you have any questions, please let us know.